For centuries, Asian societies have formed their various food cultures as creative responses to various kinds of context in which they have been situated. A tiny difference in peculiar elements of each society may bring about a significant difference in the ways their food cultures are, despite their similarities in geography or in climate. As world changes, food cultures change too. Many old-day food traditions, practices and customs are forced to alter themselves so that they seem to be more and more alienated with their own past. The concept of intangible cultural heritage or living heritage has been introduced to the realm of food with a hope to make people to become aware of their food culture's value and encourage them to keep those cultural heritage alive by making them still relevant in our present-day world, passing them on among communities and the successive generation, or even documenting them in case they are at risk of extinction. We will begin with a group of studies trying to take the historical dimensions of a cuisine, a culinary culture, or a food custom as their main concerns.
去年我们和泰国的朱拉隆功大学在杭州开了个会，那个会的主题就是留住祖先餐桌的记忆。这就是说，我们历史上的人们吃的是什么？我们要讨论这个啊。今天会议的主题是我们今天亚洲人、世界各国的人怎么样来把人类这种优良的饮食的传统，过去的这些东西继承下来。人们所吃的所有食物都来自于土地，所以这些食物原料事实上它都是季节性的。我想任何一个国家一个民族的饮食，这个它的食物原料依赖于地方产的这种季节性，这个基本规律不会发生很大的改变。我的论文讲的是中国传统的24节气的食物的特点，这一点应当说中国是很突出的，为什么呢？就是我刚才谈的那样啊，中国的这个食物原料主要是依据当地的。我们中国北方的人吃的基本是北方的东西，南方的人吃的基本是南方的东西。这个传统，中国有10000年的历史了。24节令的食品，在中国的历史上是慢慢形成的，有的呢很早，有的品种很早，有4000年历史，有的品种呢有1000多年的历史。我们知道，我们讲的祖先餐桌的记忆，就是现代工业以前，也就是说在污染这个时代以前的东西，应当说它们都是很好的。所以今天能够很好的保护它们、保存它们，是我们共同的责任。
But in every cuisine there is a history. How cuisine was started, how culinary tradition was started, what were the factors behind it by starting this? Because I am talking about the Awadh, then I can say that they have to differentiate from the Mughals. Without differentiating, they could not have imposed their own identity. Because of that, it is better to go historically, and if you study any cuisine, then must see historical angles of that development, how the cuisine was developed, and what were the processes and which type of the different culture that was intermingling in that cuisine. That is very important, because in every cuisine, if you cuisine of China, you see that in India, if you go to India, then you will find that there is a Chinese dishes, but they have their distinct identity in India, because they have added something of India into that, and they are very different from the China cuisine. The Indian Chinese cuisine and the China cuisine is very different. It is very important. Because of that, it is my request for the historians and those who are studying on the cuisine, they must go through the historical process. They must understand the cuisine, how the cuisine started, and then they can understand and they can do justice on the this study.
中西方的饮食文化交流是中西方文化交流的重要组成部分。西方的学者也说，人类除了会呼吸，就两个不学都会的一个事儿，两个事情，一个就是呼吸，还有一个就是找东西吃。就像我们这次会议讲的文化和产业之间的协调，它是不是也要进行一些创新性的研究？最后一个对现实的意义，我想讲的是，也许通过我们的研究，对中国饮食文化遗产的系统研究，我们也许可以在我们祖先餐桌上的那些食谱里边找到健康绿色的饮食方式，来改善现在人们的那个营养和健康这个问题，就去找到一些方式和方法。
Some studies explicitly show their worries about the future survival of a food culture, custom, or practice threatened by an ever-changing modern world. And the main task chose by their studiers to deal with this predicament is to carefully document them in detail.
I observe these two rituals among the communities. Actually, in terms of ritual performances for the particular rice ritual, one is rice farming ritual, and the case study number 2 is new rice celebration. They still carry on these ritual practices still the same, but the changes more on the quantity or the number of the ritual being practiced. The quantity or the number of the ritual being practiced changed tremendously many centuries ago, and especially during English colonization, it changed a lot to this community. The rice was very important to their life, to balancing the spiritual world and physical world, but nowadays the spiritual world no longer important. I believe that in few years there's no longer this kind of practices being practiced in this community. The result will be a kind of there's no longer actual ritual. There's no longer what we call it a sacred performance or holy performance. There's only a kind of representation by taking, what are the suitable elements in the ritual to be performed and to be called, oh, this is belong to our community, to our ethnic, as the representative of our identity. To me, whatever documentation and so on, it must be kept properly, and then people might see, oh, this is our great ancestors as a kind of great value, to our own culture, where our own identity, our current identity, is a kind of reflection of what been practiced, what been exposed, by our great ancestors. We might downgrade our expectation. Okay, let's have your tradition being recorded or documented properly, structurally, but take the element, from what has been practices, and then you perform it to ensure, okay, this is the segment, of the cultural item which could be found in this particular ritual, and then you perform it according to what been performed. I know that what you've been performed currently you can't, copy it 100%, but as a representative, you maintain the authenticity of this cultural item. You do it accordingly what has been practiced in the past.
In every changes that we see in society, the only answer is globalization, that we cannot resist the changes. For instance, the cooking method in Bhutan, in the past it was the traditional kitchen, a stove where you make fire. Now it is, you'll see it in the villages, but even in the villages now, the electricity is there now. It is more hygienic, more kind of more good environment for especially women in Bhutan to cook, and mainly because the electricity which is reached far corner in the country. With that comes the electrical appliances, the rice cookers, curry cookers, water boilers. So this all makes it easy for somebody to cook food. But my only fear is in the process, didn't we lose the taste of food? Because the food that we prepare in a traditional oven and the traditional pot tastes much better than the food that is cooked in the rice cookers these days. So in that way, changes are happening. We can't kind of stop it, because in the buildings you are not allowed to make fire in Bhutan, in Thimphu especially, in the capital city. So, but most importantly, studies on this are important, and then the methods that we have used in the past as a Bhutanese food maker, I think should be documented. And my paper for this conference, and for that matter the conference in Bangkok in which I'm attending right now, will definitely help Bhutan in documenting some of this.
2 other studies trying to get involved constructively with the legal or social program that help to sustain the relevance of the country's food heritages. One is from Japan and the other is from China.
因为非物质文化遗产，它和物质文化遗产有较大的差异性。一个呢，就相当于呢，那个物质文化遗产，就相当于要这个使它防腐。那么这个非物质文化遗产，它主要的就是相当于养鱼一样的，是在于使它能够活下去。因为有一些过度的开发，商业开发，它可能就是不会局限于那一些传统的，比方说那一种传统的技艺，有一些呢是为了达到一定的这个利益的目的、商业目的，然后进行炒作，或者是进行呢一些自己的凭空想象的这样一些编造，这样呢，它实际上是对于这种非物质文化遗产的传统是有所伤害的，它的伤害有时候是很严重的。保护文化遗产，现在实际上从政府的层面来看，它主要呢，现在我们中国它已经立法了，这个非物质文化遗产保护法已经是公布了，有法律的保护。第二呢，在全国形成了一个非物质文化遗产的这个保护中心，各个地方省市也成立了相应的组织。第三，它就是对于各个地方呢，这个饮食文化的遗产，它这个通过这个筛选，然后呢形成了这个目录。那目录呢，已经呢全国呢是有3批，有各个地方还有。这呢是我们的这个国家的这样基本的保护的这种措施。在这个当中呢，它保护有几点。
20 years ago, Japanese food culture and food life is changing and very destroyed and very erosion, but now conflict in Japan food life. So that 25 years Japanese government set up the food law of food education. I'm about 50 years engaging and developed the how to educate for food life, especially the young children and students. How to reconstruction new type of Japanese culture. That's a question.
Whilst there are several studies suggesting that changes in people's food consumption patterns from traditional to the modern one is the key factor of nutrition transitions that seems to happen in common all over Asia. But a study from Indonesia tries to suggest that the nutrition transitions in question seems to be the result from the global modernization less than form changes in our manner of eating our own traditional food.
I made a study in 3 countries, in Indonesia and Philippines and Malaysia. I tried to answer why our people more obese now. Obesity became an epidemic. Is this because we changed our food pattern from traditional to Western style food to Westernization? We know that more franchise restaurants come to our countries like McDonald's, pizza, KFC, CFC, and so on. And then I did these studies. I tried to compare the food pattern of the rural people and the urban people. I tried to investigate whether they changed their food pattern from traditional to modern style food pattern. But what I found out, this study was done in 2008, 2009, and 2010 in the 3 countries. I found out that our people in these regions still preserve their traditional food. They still eat for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. We still eat our traditional food. We go to the modern food only for in the leisure time, when we celebrate something, when our children have birthday, have something to celebrate. We sometime, although we still preserve our traditional food, but because of the economic power, because of the better economic situation in our countries, I think also in Thailand, we eat the traditional food, but we add more sugar, more fat, more oil, and even in the traditional food we put more, maybe sometimes we put cheese. So I think that's the answer why we become more obese, why heart diseases, cancer increase in our countries. So because of we change our food pattern from the traditional one with more vegetable, more fibers, to become more fat and more sugar.
However hard globalization affects the life of Asian food cultures, there are examples of food cultural heritage that seem to live on without trouble in this same period of change. Here, 2 participants from Myanmar and Laos will tell us how the food cultures of the old days can still be lively today as they were in the past.
We use lapet in daily life. It's in different forms, 3 forms. One, we use as plain tea, like a Chinese tea that we drink every day, and we have that at home. And another one is sweet tea. You have coffee 3 in 1, so we have tea 3 in 1. Myanmar tea, the same, lapet, but different form. And another one, we cannot find that in the whole wide world except in Myanmar, because this is the traditional food and culture of Myanmar. That is the tea leaves are being fermented, soft fermented, and then to make it into not the Western salad, but Myanmar way of, it's like similar to your country's yam, like us, So we use that tea leaves, fermented tea leaves, together with onions or maybe cabbage or maybe tomatoes, and then shrimp, dried shrimp, plus other nuts. We sort of mixed it together and eat it. So that is for the young generation used as a salad. But for the elderly people, some people prefer to use it in a very traditional way. That is, we have some kind of a container with many compartments. In the middle, they would put lepet, and other compartments they would use different nuts and then eat it traditionally. We still welcome the Japanese tea because it's still very popular. But I don't think, from my point of view, it would not be a drawback for our, like a culture of the Myanmar lepet. It will still exist. They may use the green tea. Japanese tea may be welcome by itself, by people. There are many people who consume. But still, like I had said earlier, there are 3 ways of consuming Myanmar tea. So salad would still go on, right? Even many Thais who have visited Myanmar, they told me that they like Myanmar's salad, tea salad. So also like Americans, and they are like British, they go for the Myanmar tea leaf salad.
แต่ว่าทีนี้เนาะเมื่อที่ว่าฝรั่งเศสเนาะเข้ามาประเทศลาวแล้วเนาะแล้วก็มีวัฒนธรรมการกินการอยู่ด้านฮิตของประเพณีของลาวเนาะก็เลยมีการเสื่อมกับฝรั่งเศสคือจะมีข้าวจีเข้ามาเนาะในข้าวจีในความหมายตัวนี้เฉพาะคนในเมืองในปัจจุบันนี้เข้าหมายถึงข้าวจีฝรั่งเศสเนาะข้าวจีฝรั่งเศสนี่บางครั้งเราเรียกว่าข้าวจีปาเต้คำว่าปาเต้นี่มันหมายถึงว่าสิ่งที่เราเอามาเป็นส่วนประกอบหนึ่งเพื่อให้กินกับข้าวจีให้มันมีรสชาติให้เป็นรสชาติของท้องถิ่นเนาะซึ่งว่าอันนี้เป็นวัฒนธรรมที่เริ่มเข้ามาของฝรั่งเศสแล้วเมื่อก่อนนี่เนาะมีแต่คนระดับชั้นสูงคนที่เป็นเจ้านายคนที่เป็นคนที่รับใช้ฝรั่งเท่านั้นที่ได้กินข้าวจี่แล้ววิธีการกินข้าวจี่ของคนฝรั่งหรือคนชั้นสูงท้องถิ่นใน3ประเทศนี้เนาะกินเมื่อก่อนนี่หมายว่ากินในงานสำคัญต่างๆกินเพื่อแสดงบทบาทเนาะว่าตัวเองได้ทำงานกับฝรั่งแล้วมีความฐานะดีขึ้นมีดังขึ้นเนาะมันเป็นสัญลักษณ์อันหนึ่งนะแล้วก็วิธีการกินของคนฝรั่งนั้นเมื่อก่อนนี้เขาจะกินกับเนยเนาะกับบัตเตอร์กับไข่กับกาแฟแล้วต่อมาเนาะย้อนมีเวียดนามมีกัมพูชาต่างๆเนาะมีเขาเนาะมีองค์ประกอบอาหารพื้นบ้านหลายๆอย่างเนาะก็มีการดัดปรับหรือพัฒนาขึ้นว่าเราจะทำยังไงให้ข้าวจี่นี้มันกลมกลืนกับอาหารพื้นบ้านของเราก็เลยมีการมาทำเป็นเครื่องประกอบคือคิดเอาเครื่องในตับหมูตับงัวมาทำบดแล้วก็มาทาข้าวจี่เนาะแล้วก็กินไปด้วยเนาะแล้วก็ทาเอาใส่เครื่องในองค์ประกอบเป็นหัวคิดเป็นสร้างเนาะของคนท้องถิ่นลาวเวียดนามกัมพูชาเอาเข้ามาแล้วก็มาทำเนาะทำแล้วก็กินกันแล้วปัจจุบันนี้ถือว่าพบได้ทุกแห่งเนาะอาจจะอยู่ในเมืองอยู่ชนบทต่างๆก็กินทั่วกันไปบ่มีการแบ่งแยกชนชั้นมาต้องเป็นคนชั้นสูงต้องกินได้เนาะอันนี้เป็นพื้นฐานปัจจัยที่ในการรับเอาวัฒนธรรมของการกินข้าวจี่เข้ามาแล้วก็เป็นที่หนึ่งที่มาของมันว่าทำไมลาวจึงรับรู้เอาเรื่องข้าวจี่นี่มาเป็นอาหารประจำพื้นบ้านและเป็นมรดกหนึ่งของอาหารของในประเทศ3ประเทศนี้